Let's go, girls. Welcome to Talk Wealthy to Me. I'm Michelle Taylor, founder of Women in Wealth. From breaking money myths to building wealth and achieving financial freedom, we're here to empower you to create your own path. Talk Wealthy. Now, join the conversation and let's change the way women think and feel about money. Okay, ready? Today's guest is Dr. Stephanie Poris, Orlando's only female-owned and operated double board-certified plastic surgeon. Born and raised in Satellite Beach, Florida, Stephanie turned her love of science, artistry, and precision into a career in plastic surgery. From interning at the Cleveland Clinic to training at Advent Health and Summa Health, she's built a practice known for compassionate, elevated care, and she is on a mission to redefine what it means to feel empowered and confident in your own skin. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Talk Wealthy to Me podcast. I am Michelle Taylor, your host, and I am thrilled to have a very dear friend with me today, Dr. Stephanie Poris. She and I have known each other for the last 3 or 4 years now, and I've loved hearing her story, and I know that you will too. So welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It is an honor to be on your podcast and sitting with you today, and having watched you grow this over the last 4 years is just been so incredible. So thank you for inviting me here.
You're so welcome. So for all of you listening, Dr. Poris is a double board certified plastic surgeon, and she happens to be the only female owner-operator in Orlando, Florida. Yeah. So we take a lot of pride in her around here. But tell us a little bit about you, a little bit about your business. How'd you get here?
Yeah. So I own Poris Plastic Surgery. I am the only surgeon in this practice as of now. And, coming out of the gate through training, I always knew I wanted to be a plastic surgeon ever since I was a teenager. This was sort of my dream. I felt drawn to surgery, and then I felt drawn to plastic surgery, and it was an art mixed with a science, and that was my mind exactly. And so, I pursued it and pursued it and pursued it. And then, finally at the end of training, trying to figure out where do I go next? What I'm going to actually get a job, right? And a career and what I want to do. I said, you know what? I think I just want to be in my own space. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to have control of the patient experience and be able to, just practice the way I want to, and go home every day feeling like I was able to give it my all, and, really be involved in the experience. And so thus Poris Plastic Surgery was born, right out of the gate, out of training.
And you truly are giving such an authentically you client experience. For anybody that has been listening for a while, you know that I'm a shoe lover. And that's so much a part of how the two of us met. I would love for you to tell that story, but I was going through a local publication, and I see this advertisement for Stephanie's practice, but it says the Stiletto Surgeon. So immediately I think, well, I need to know this girl. And I have to tell you, as somebody who's gone into your practice, you are truly in every girl's dreamiest office. There's pink everywhere. There's beautiful art. There's your editorial, magazine wall. I mean, your staff is all female. It just feels like home when you walk in. So you have stayed true to that. And I love every time that I come in there. And I know I'm not the only one. I think we've all talked about it. But tell us the story, because the Stiletto Surgeon isn't just because you love shoes. It has a much cooler background to it. So tell us how you became known as the Stiletto Surgeon.
Yeah, so it actually started. So it was born actually about 10 years ago. And I was a general surgery resident at the time, actually here at Advent Health Orlando. I was one of the only women in the program. There was my counterpart who was also female, but we were 2 out of all of us.
Wow.
And, it's very much a man's world, surgery. But that's okay. And I expected that. And frankly, I thrive in that and nothing scares me. And, I just, proving my worth being there every day.
Mhm.
And, I've always loved fashion. I've always loved style. That's the artsy side of who I am. And so I would come into work with my heels on, dressed to the nines to go on rounds on the surgery floor. And, I would get comments here and there of how are you walking in those? And, people would, say nice things. They would say mean things. Who cares, right? I would just brush it off. And, finally one day I'm in the operating room and a scrub nurse was kind of just, ragging on me about being small compared to who I was operating with that day, one of my attendings. And I just had sort of a lot and it was building up and, and finally she's like, you should just wear your stilettos in here. And I said, you know what? One day I'm going to write a book and I'm going to call it The Stiletto Surgeon. And it's going to mean more to me about sort of rising above and being confident and standing on your own 2 feet and just strutting your stuff and kind of just, putting everything and all the negativity in the rearview mirror. And that's literally where the term came from. But it was just really more out of, just the little adversities and just sort of embracing rather than sort of deflecting and converting to penny loafers. So
you're not a penny loafer girl.
Not a penny loafer girl.
Mm-mm.
I just tried to embrace it and turn it into a positive. And I think that I try to do that with a lot of things in my life. And I think it helps propel you forward. And otherwise, you're going to be living in behind you.
Well, and you are such a positive person and so much fun to be around. I remember so I reached out to Stephanie and said, I have to know you. Let's go grab lunch. And she was just starting her practice. So we went to lunch and immediately knew we were going to be friends. And the rest is history. But every time I am with you, whether it is in your office or in like casual and settings as friends, she's always just bubbly and happy. And I love that. I think that you're the epitome of what you set out to be. And that's incredible. So are we going to write the book?
So maybe one day. I definitely thought about it. And I think now that I've started my practice, and I think it's sort of a dying breed to start your practice out of training and hang your shingle, as they call it in the industry. But I think as we see healthcare change, and as big business becomes ever increasingly big business, especially in healthcare, I think it's very important for us physicians to sort of take back ownership and healthcare. And so I thought, I've thought about writing about this experience and how to start it. And I've had a practice consultant since the minute I started, and she's wonderful. And we definitely talk about it. So maybe there'll be a Stiletto Surgeon
one day. You do have a Barbie.
I do have a Barbie.
I do have a Barbie. We need to put a link to a picture in the show notes or something.
Yes, I do. It's a great Barbie.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you were always drawn to being a plastic surgeon, which I didn't know that about you, but I also think it's so unique how you explained it, where it is a little bit of the art with the science. And for so many of the clients that come to you, I would imagine it's more happy endings than stressful, encounters, which I know obviously you have those too. But what was it about plastic surgery that made you think that's my calling?
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, it's an elective-based surgery. So you're taking healthy people and you are putting them under anesthesia and you are doing a surgery, right? Or non-surgical treatment. So there is some always fear to that. But you're not living in the trauma world. You're not dealing with acute situations on a daily basis in plastic surgery. So it's very thoughtful. It's very curated. all the T's need to be crossed, all the I's need to be dotted
Yeah.
because these are healthy patients. And so what I loved about it is that I think plastic surgery allows us to slow down and be thoughtful. Not that surgical fields aren't other surgical fields aren't thoughtful, but there is really an art to it that I think sometimes is underemphasized in training. You really have to be able to look at the big picture of a patient. And not only is this a breast augmentation, but how is this breast augmentation going to age with this particular patient? How is this specific implant that I'm thinking about placing going to affect her life long term? Is it going to be too heavy for her? Will it be too wide for her frame? There's no one size fits all model. And so what I think is one of the challenges of plastic surgery that I find so fascinating is that you're constantly thinking and morphing and changing, and not every surgery is the same. And I think that that is really exciting. And that is why I was drawn to it. You know, I love anatomy and blood and guts and all of the, you know, all of that.
Better you than me.
And the feeling of being in the operating room, it's sort of my peace, believe it or not. I mean, I'm a very extroverted person. I'm very talkative, right? But in the operating room, I'm very quiet. I'm very reserved. I'm very at peace. And so that's a different part of me that I was able to unlock that keeps me very well balanced and grounded. And so there's a huge part of plastic surgery and being a surgeon that just fit my personality to the T.
Do you play any music when you're in there?
I play a lot of music.
What kind of music?
So I am probably the most eclectic soundtrack. And I think anybody who's been in the operating room with me, you know, one of the things I always get is, oh, you have the best music, because one minute it'll be 80s classics and the next minute it'll be like alternative rock. Eminem will come on, and then some country. Or then there'll be days when I'm doing facelifts. A lot of the times I like to listen to like really nice classical, love jazz. So I'm all over the place, and it keeps it kind of fun and exciting, but there is always music. And it's actually been proven in studies actually that surgeons that operate with music tend to have more efficiency in the operating room. So it's pretty, it's pretty interesting. There's actually some evidence behind it.
So little Stephanie, before she was Dr. Poris, what did you envision your life to look like when you thought about, even before medical school? I mean, you knew you wanted to be a plastic surgeon, but what was it that drew you to this? Did you always want to go into medicine? Was it a lifestyle that you thought felt glamorous or something that you were seeking? What was that?
Yeah. So I think little me looking forward, you know, I think that there was always a success component. What success was when I was 16 years old was wildly different than what I think success is now. But I wanted to be able to stand on my own 2 feet and have job security, number one. And again, science brain, art brain, all of those things wrapped into one. Most importantly for me, I wanted to be able to enjoy what I did every day. And so for me, going into something that I had zero passion for was never going to be an option. And I think for me, it was always like, well, if I want to stand on my own 2 feet and I'm not passionate about it, I'm likely to pour the least amount of effort into it and to do poorly and become unsuccessful. So I really needed to find and listen to what my passion was and hone in on it. And so for me now, looking back, I think success has really been achieving my goal of being a surgeon.
Yeah.
And really what took me a minute to realize was achieving my goal of being a mom and a wife and having that family dynamic. Because for so long, especially in medicine, really any profession that you're working towards for so long, that's all you're thinking about. You're sort of in this rat race going on and on and on through the years to try to climb the ladder to get there, right? Whether it's the corporate ladder or to become a doctor or to become a surgeon or become a plastic surgeon or to get that first job. You're always climbing.
Always.
So that's all you're thinking about. You almost have like this professional tunnel vision. And then all of a sudden you're sort of sidelined by a family. And realizing how important that is and maintaining that balance was huge. And I can tell you that my success in life largely depends on this family. And that is something I did not see at 16 years old. I was all about the glitz, the glam, the glory of my career and standing on my own 2 feet. And I was not thinking about, sure, I would have a family, but I was not thinking about how important that was in my success. And so that took me until I was a little bit older to sort of figure out and really sink my teeth into. And now I love it.
Well, and you have the most adorable family. And we both have kiddos that are young. So I imagine, and I think this goes without saying, all of us know it is a challenge every single day, but it's also the best part of the day is trying to figure out how do you wear all these hats and feel like you're pouring enough into all of these different silos of life. And I look at it as a personal challenge and fun. It's stressful, but before you know it, one of those silos is going to go and then the other silo goes. And then it's just, it's different.
And it's Italy, girl.
It's Italy.
And it's Italy.
I told you we were good friends. So how has your relationship with money been from a young girl? Did you come from a family that gave you the tools that you felt equipped and prepared? Did you deal with student loan debt? Like, what did that journey look like?
Great question. So I've given this a lot of thought, especially after listening to your podcast. And I'll tell you, first and foremost, you and I share a lot of parallels. Our fathers seem to be key entities in our education when it comes to wealth and building wealth. And I can tell you, so my dad was a pediatric dentist. He owned a few pediatric dental practices while I was young. So he was an entrepreneur. So there's apple tree. And I would watch him every night. He'd be in his office after hours. He'd come home. He'd work at his desk. And he would pull me into his office 7 p.m. at night, even when I was like 10 years old. And he would have me start organizing receipts for tax season on the floor. And he would sit there and he would show me the cup and handle of investments and dividend reimbursement. And I remember he got me my first dividend that he made me manage when I was, 15.
Oh my
but
God,
I was young.
Love this.
And got me a Fidelity account. And I, invested my first dividend and I watched it, my little return of $5 every month on the drip. And he sort of included me in these conversations. And little did I know, and at the time I was like, ugh, this is
so
awful.
boring.
This is so boring. And, but all the while you're kind of listening. You're kind of like, I'm seeing it. It's not foreign. And he said to me, and I'll never forget these words. He said, you're going to spend 3/4 of your adult life managing your wealth, no matter what you do. That's what he said. 3/4 of your time is going to be dedicated to managing your wealth, whatever wealth looks like. It's going to be looking at your money and where the money is going and where
how to grow it, how to pay debt, whatever.
And so he was a really big influence in my life, and just sort of gave me some foundational knowledge and tools. I didn't really see my first real paycheck until I was 37 years old. Of course, I was getting paid as a resident, but it was slave labor.
Yeah.
And, that money just was money in, money out, just paying Uber Eats and surviving, right? And I was fortunate to have a wonderful husband, who has a wonderful job. And, he's kept me afloat until I had, started making a few pennies. But once I really, saw that I was going to have a real job, I got really nervous. I didn't feel like I had the training. I'd been so focused on the human body and anatomy that how am I going to, be able to manage 3/4 of my time for wealth, right? So I started to get the people into place. I discussed with you and, we really sat down and looked at what the projections would be. And, talked to many people and with my husband and I really just sat down and my dad and figured it out.
I love that so much that your dad is still part of your financial story. The first time we started having conversations around money, you told me about him and how he helped you. And I love that. And I think you and your husband have done a really good job at approaching your financials as a team. And, we talk about that all the time, where if you don't want to be driving the canoe, you need to at least be in the boat.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like you're both equipped with one of the oars.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are really good at communicating and tackling things head on. And, people may sit here and think, oh, well, you're a plastic surgeon, you're a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
But in the beginning, with starting your own practice, there is so much that comes with that. It's even more important that you pay attention to the pennies, because you're trying to build something and you've spent a decade longer in school than most of the people listening or I have ever spent in school. So it's like I'd imagine that there's a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
You come out and you're like, okay, I've gotten this elusive title of doctor, but now I'm in my 30s.
And I'm broke, right?
And I'm broke and I'm
Right.
trying to build this practice. And I also have a husband and I want to have
loans
babies and I
right.
want to buy my dream house. And how do you do all the things? And that's one of the things I hope that people get from this podcast is so many of us are dealing with the same money issues, money success stories, but also just baggage and questions and thoughts, even though it may seem on the outside like somebody isn't. And that's where having conversations around it is going to be helpful for all of us. What do you think, other than the one thing your dad said to you, is there a piece of advice that he ever gave you or anybody in your life around taking care of your money or what to do with it that you feel has served you well?
Well, one tenet that I think I always live by, and this was also a plaque on his wall, was those who say it cannot be done should not interrupt those doing it.
Oh, I love that.
And it is something I live by, and I think it's applicable to everything. If I just approach everything, right? Like getting a loan from the bank to start the practice, okay? So many banks said no. And I had a bank, the head of a bank here locally say, you should probably just join the hospital first and then, work for a couple of years and then come back to us. And I said, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to show you. And I had the best business plan and I built out the best. Finally, I found a bank and they were like, this is the best business plan we've ever seen.
Oh.
They use my business plan now as an example for other businesses. And so, it just took somebody also to buy in, but it also took me to not stop and just have the grit and don't let anybody else, kind of muddy
your dream.
My dream. And I think that came from my dad. I think that came from that little plaque on the wall, ultimately. So
I love that. And, isn't it wild the things that you remember that you tie in and equate to success and even like around financial success from your parents that they weren't necessarily positioning as advice around money.
Mm-hmm.
My dad says things like, pay attention to detail and like these little things that be true to your school. And I can take those little things, these dadisms, and tie them back into business and financials. And it makes so much sense. And it makes me smile because it was a big influence in my life growing up.
And you didn't see it, but it was just their way of imparting wisdom. And I hope I can share the same with my kids. And, maybe they'll take a lesson from a wall someday in my office, right?
I was just going to ask you, what have you guys done? Have you started having those conversations or exposing them to conversations that you and Dan are having?
So, kind of. So Dylan, my oldest, he's 7, going to be 8 soon. He gets savings. He does little chores around the house. He lost a tooth last night.
Did the tooth fairy come?
The tooth fairy came, and the first little smiling kid I saw, toothless smiling kid through the shower window this morning was, Mom, I got $20, which I know is a lot. It's all we had on us. Was not the first tooth. It was like the 8th tooth. But we did not have any less than $20 on us. So, the tooth fairy.
Don't you love that when you're
Yeah.
like, the tooth fairy? She was not prepared.
She was not prepared. She almost forgot. The tooth fairy may have come at 5:45 in the morning because so yeah, you do what you got to do though, right?
Yep.
And now, and this, what he said to me this morning was, okay, now I think I have enough for the next Lego, right? So I think he's starting to get it. And I think we're, they're starting to understand what it means to work for things and whether it's candy or money, it's all the same, right? You just work for something. So.
I love what your dad did though, because I think so many of us do the typical, okay, you have done something for our family. Now I'm going to pay you for your efforts. But with that, you should save some of it towards this big thing. I think a lot of people do that. But what your dad did, and I'm trying to do something a little similar, is showing them the power of what money does when you put it to work for you. I think a lot of us may inadvertently expose them to the negative side of compounding numbers when we're talking about being in debt or don't take on debt, credit cards are bad, or whatever you may be saying. But when you take that same dollar and shift it to what it can do when it grows for you, I think that's what makes it fun, like it did for you.
Right.
Both of my kids, I have been buying them a share of stock in something that interests them. And they're still young. My son is 10, my daughter's 6. So they are starting to get it, especially Beckett. But I want to do more. Just listening to that now, it's like, okay, how else can I get him logged in and to see everything? Because that's when it's fun.
Oh, yeah. And it's great. I mean, and to this day, I have one of the drip accounts still. I still see the little money go out, and I forget about the account. And, so it's just, it was nice. And, I remember when I bought my first stock, I bought a medical stock, a biotech, risky business. And I watched it rise. It was rising like crazy. And I had made so much money. And I was like, should I hold it? Should I not? Oh, I'll hold it because I thought it would. And then it fell because biotech stocks, that's what they do. You gotta sell high. Yeah. And I learned a lesson. I didn't make that mistake twice. But I remember, this was when I was like 30 years old, I did this. And it was so fun. It's like going to Vegas.
It is.
The losses stink, but it was a good lesson.
Life is full of losses,
Life
right?
is full of losses. But it was fun to be able to do that and to understand it and with little risk. And I'm thankful that I have a little bit of knowledge now, not enough. I'm still learning every single day.
All of us are.
But how to grow more and manage the growth, which is a huge deal.
So did you make any big money faux pas or anything that you will impart on any of the listeners that maybe will prevent them from making the same mistake that you can think of growing up? Or do you think you were a good student of your dad's?
I think I was a lucky student. I think that I was the one thing that I will say that I was given, when I was in college, I was given sort of a weekly allowance, right? Of spending, food, water, shelter, et cetera. And so I had that. But anything extra, trips, clothes, fun stuff, the Friday night fun.
Purple porpoise.
I got myself a job. Yeah. I was a cocktail waitress. I, tutored. I hustled parking. I did all kinds of, I went home for the summer and I worked at White House Black Market, and do you want this in a small or medium? Right. And so I learned to hustle for my money. Which is fun money.
That's a great skill.
Yeah. And so not necessarily any faux pas. I think I was lucky because I wasn't given the extra, but more so I just learned how to fight for it. And anything that I wanted, I had to figure out how to get it. And I'm not somebody that takes no lightly.
No, you're going to figure it out.
Figure it out.
I had a job at the West Oaks Mall. Oh. Very briefly.
Yep.
One summer, but the same thing. I mean, if I could babysit, if I could, help somebody. I mean, I remember being 15 or 16 years old and mowing my neighbor's lawn to get $20. And I think that that is such an important skill to teach the young kiddos that are looking at us to pave the way there's a lot of luck that comes into this.
Right.
But the hustle, don't ever not hustle. Don't ever let anyone outwork you.
Right.
And I know that to be true about you. You are going to be the hardest worker in the room, and you have so much to show for it.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
So fun.
And so one of the other great things I love about your practice is it's all women in there. Was that intentional, or is it just kind of a happenstance?
I think it was intentional. I mean, 98% of my patients are female in the aesthetic industry. It's not that I don't see male patients, because we do. We see male patients all the time. But certainly I think that just by circumstance, by request, I think a lot of our patients, I always ask, how did you hear about us? And they'll say, I saw you on
a billboard
somewhere. And, I loved that you were a woman, and I loved that you had a female staff, and I loved that you seemed relatable. You seemed to sort of understand.
And you spend a lot of time with your patients when they come in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I love that.
We do. We try to all spend as much time as we can. My staff will go in, then I go in. And usually by the time you have surgery, I mean, I've seen you 3 times at least.
Mm-hmm.
We've answered all your questions, any email. It's just easy. That's the way it should be. It should just be easy. Anytime you're undergoing any kind of operation, or really doing anything in life, it just should be easy. I'm an efficiency person.
I love that.
Nothing should be hard.
No.
I mean, life is hard.
Right.
But we don't need to compound
make it harder.
Yes, exactly.
So one of the really interesting things in conversations that I'm sure you have been a part of is the industry of plastic surgery. And this goes back to women and self-care and how we put out the best version of ourselves. There is so much of a taboo for some people around admitting or aging gracefully if they don't believe in going to get a little Botox or filler or whatever it is. But I think what you do is empower women to show up truly comfortable in their skin, whatever that means. If it's like the Botox, or if it's a tummy tuck, or getting breast augmentation, or whatever it is, showing up as the best version of themselves to go out and write their success story and whatever that looks like. And I'm sure that you hear all the time, it's elective and it's just, it seems like it may be frivolous or an extra. But in my opinion, what you do is empowering people and should be a priority. If it's going to be making you feel good about who you are and what you're out building. So hopefully that narrative starts to change a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think much like a hot pair of stilettos, right? It gives you confidence. It might be shiny, it might be frivolous, it might be really expensive, but it gives you confidence. You're strutting your stuff. You're walking into that boardroom ready to command the room and take control. And I think a lot of plastic surgery, when done well and when done ethically, really can set our patients up for this life that they either had and lost or have always dreamed of. I constantly hear, especially my weight loss patients, I have never seen my vagina.
What?
I mean, yes, showstopper. I've never seen my vagina until now. You don't understand. This is like the most confidence boosting moment. It's unbelievable. Or I've never realized that I could feel so beautiful in my clothes. Or for my daughter's wedding, I had a patient recently. She, bless her, she loved her to pieces. She's 67 years old. She had a tummy tuck. She was getting ready for her daughter to get married, her only daughter, and mother of the bride, right? She's nervous. She wants to look her best, lost some weight. We took off, her tummy skin, and she sent me pictures from her daughter's wedding. And I mean, she was just glowing, and you could just see her confidence. Yeah. And she told us, right? I mean, she told us, I have never felt more beautiful. Thank you. And that's why we do it. That's why we love it, right? This is seeing women and men completely transform their entire
butterfly,
viewpoint, like a butterfly, just and fly away unhappy and, gives me, that's my success, right? That's my why.
Yeah. I mean, to get to see people every day be emotional in the best way possible because you give them a piece of something that they never thought they could have back or ever have in general, it's got to be amazing.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So what's next for the practice?
Well, I think, the biggest thing is growth and expansion. I think we're always growing in every single way, learning to, do what we're doing better, and building on the wonderful foundation that I think our office has set. So stay tuned because there is going to be some wonderful things ahead.
I am not at all surprised by that. So for anybody listening, where can they find you and follow along on this journey that you're on?
Yes. So I am Dr. Stephanie Poris at Poris Plastic Surgery. Our office is located right off of the Parr Street exit in Orlando, Winter Park, Florida. You can go to our website, Poris Plastic Surgery, Poris, plasticsurgery.com. You can follow me at stiletto_surgeon on Instagram. And I also have a podcast. So you can follow along at the podcast, The Stiletto Surgeon, as well. And
I love it. We'll put all of that in the show notes. And for anybody that's local, keep an eye out. I've seen you on quite a few billboards and I totally have a fangirl moment and try not to take my phone out and take a picture while I'm driving,
right.
But I love it. It's so great.
Thank you.
Do you, when you see those when you see the billboards, is there a little moment of like, holy cow?
I think it is a little bit surreal. And it's funny because my kids will be in the car.
I was going to say to your kids.
Yeah. And they're like, why are you on podcasts, mommy? Or not podcasts. Why are you on billboards, mommy? Are any other mommies on billboards?
All of these women, maybe.
I just, I just laugh and I just chuckle. And I said, yeah, mommy is big. She's, finally 20 feet tall.
I'm doing big things. I love that. Oh, awesome. Well,
so
thank you so much.
Thank you
for
so much.
joining. This was so much fun. For any of you listening, I would encourage you to find Dr. Poris, follow along. She is a breath of fresh air in any room that she is in. And of course, when it comes to what we're doing here, like, subscribe, share. The Women in Wealth community is bigger and better the more women that we bring into the conversation. If you heard anything today or have any suggestions on topics or guests that you'd want to hear on the podcast, send us a note. We will make sure to get back to you and try and accommodate. And as always, I appreciate you so much and look forward to change the way women think and feel about money together. Until next time.